Namaste, and a very warm good morning to everyone. I'm going to stand here and speak and not the podium because I think we are almost the same height. So you might miss seeing me. I was very, very humbled by the nice introduction. And I don't know about you, I really like listening to someone introducing me. It's a small capsule of reflecting on what your journey has been and where did you start from and where you're running on to see what the end is going to be. Let me tell you, my mother was pulled out of school in grade 5 by her grandmother back in 1960s. She didn't want any daughter of the house to go to school, study with boys, or study at all. So I grew up with a woman who would always say to me and my sister, study, because I didn't have an opportunity or the resources to do so. And my mother would say this repeatedly growing up from nursery class to class 12. But I was conflicted with the idea that my mother didn't go to school. She, when you meet her, is one of the most intelligent, intellectual, and well-articulated people I've ever known. Thank you. And the fascinating thing was, she would say, Deepak, I didn't go to school. And then my dad would give her the salary, and she would run the house perfectly for the month, over month, over month. And I would say, for a woman who's never read or studied maths, to do financial management, for someone who's never done debating, to have communication skills to argue with my dad and win with the best arguments and have the mic drop moments in the house. For someone who's never read the world literature of the Renaissance and to advise me, my sister, our friends on life issues was quite revelatory. So at age 14, disturbed, angry and frustrated with my mother's pestering of not being able to study herself, made me question her and confront her. So one day I got back from school and asked my mother, I said, you say you didn't go to school, but everything that you do in your life is what they teach us in school. You know, how to manage finances, how to talk well, how to think right. My mother laughed and she said, I did not go to school, but I've been paying attention to whatever life has been teaching me. And to my 14-year-old brain, that was a super philosophical statement. I thought, this poor philosophical woman. Not only did that statement made me feel that way, but as I kind of started to grow up with that statement in my mind that my mother is learning from life, I went on to ask everybody I met, school teachers, friends in tuition classes, coaching institutes, hey, my mother without going to school knows so much. What do you know? And somewhere their answers were fascinating, weird, absurd, and I would make a note of it on the back pages of my notebook. I started to believe that if my mother was learning simply by living, that means everyone who was living was learning something. Years later, not that many years later, but 3 years later, with that belief, I started Project Fuel. Project Fuel, as it was mentioned in the introduction, stands for Forward the Understanding of Every Life Lesson. And what we do in Project Fuel is we design life lessons of people from around the world into interesting activities, into workshops, in creative projects. So I teach, as a wonderful, excited young man, a subject called human wisdom. The wonderful thing about that is it does not come from the 2% cream layer of the world. It comes from common corridors of life, from sex workers. I take life lessons on customer management and teach to MBA graduates in France. From Indian soldiers, I take life lessons on perseverance and teach that to refugees in camps across Syria, Afghanistan, and Europe. If allowed to kind of disseminate this wall between class, strata, and learning, it is fascinating what all you can learn and imbibe from people who don't sound like you, don't look like you, or maybe don't come from the same community or social space as you do. I now believe that there are 7.536 billion people breathing alive in this planet and on this planet as we sit in this auditorium. 7.536 billion as of this morning I checked. Which means that there are 7.536 billion life lessons available for us to be able to learn from. There are 7.536 billion mistakes to learn from. 7.536 billion stories to get inspired from. 7.536 billion heartbreaks to associate with. 7.536 billion people who want something. 7.536 billion people who have failed at something. 7.536 billion life lessons, even if every person just gave one story away. With that belief, I started Project Fuel. And today it's better because I look a little older. But imagine at 17, looking 14, and teaching a subject called human wisdom. I was the biggest no-no that the world had ever seen, because I would enter classrooms or universities, and the principals and the directors who had only thus far communicated on emails, you know how you write, "Yes, Mr. Ramola, we look forward to having you. Yes, Mr. Ramola, sounds good." Until I would show up and they would be saying to me, "Do you travel with your father?" And I said, "Oh, was he supposed to be here?" And they were like, "Who's going to take the session?" I said, "I." And they're like, "Oh, so you've learned from your father?" I said, "No." And then, to the biggest shock of their life, they would say, "Are you Deepak Ramola by any chance?" And I was like, "Yes, I'm Deepak Ramola. And I'm going to be on stage." I started to believe sooner than later that my talent was my responsibility. You know, the world we live in, it tells you to focus. Everybody says, focus kariye, dhyan dijiye. I have come to realize what you really need to do in life is balance, not focus. Because focus makes you win and makes only you win. Balance helps everyone in your life win with you. Thank you. I'm going to not let you all go so easily. You just clapped on that statement. I want you to kind of internalize that, because I am an educator and I believe in experiential learning. I'm going to play a small game with all of you on that thought. It's a very simple game. On the count of 1, you have to clap once. Okay? Let's try. 1. Fantastic. On the count of 2, you have to clap twice. On the count of 3, you have to clap thrice. The only rule at the Print Summit is you all are one team, so you all have to clap together. Even if one person claps wrong, you all lose and I win. And that's the end of my talk. Milab. Let's see how good the audience is at the Print Summit. And I'm telling you, I tried this at the United Nations in New York. Even they lost it. So let's see if you can get this done. 1. Almost 30 people clapping off. So when you finish clapping and you can hear others clapping, that's the sound of losing. 1. Wow, you get offended, is it? Yes. 1, 2, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 0. Hey, they told me you're addressing a smart audience. Well, have you said there's a smart audience? Come on. That's probably why I chose to title my talk, The Life Lessons for the Fine Print of Life. You know, things that will guide you henceforward. So let's try that once more. I'm really heartbroken, I must tell you. At like 11 o'clock in the morning, everybody needs to at least get this right. Okay. You want to give it one more? Wow, people are like, you're not winning a trip to Thailand if I lose and you win. I hope. Okay, let's get started. 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 3, 1, 0. You can charge them double next year. Whoever is clapping a 0. Okay, I'll leave at that, otherwise the whole conference will be just clapping. But you see, there are two kinds of people in the world. That's why I invented this activity. The first, concentrate on the number and say, okay, Deepak said 1, here we go. 2, 3. The second kind of people always are looking at what the person next to them is clapping and are trying to balance the sound with the person or trying to match, not even balance, just trying to match visually. This life lesson was given to me by a 7-year-old blind girl in Ahmedabad at, I think, a place in her life when she was taught this by her grandmother. And she said, concentration is the most important thing, but balance is above that. And I, ever since, have taught more than 92,000 people across the world. And this game that we created together has only been won by 1,142 people. Because most people in the world are really good at focusing on the number, are terrible at balancing with everybody around them in the room. So when I was asked to speak and be part of this beautiful place with all of you, I thought, what can I do best? So I actually reflected on some of my favorite life lessons from lakhs and thousands of people I've met over the world. And you are the people who kind of give visual context to people's stories. So I wanted to share some fascinating narratives with you. So I'm going to share one by one life lessons. This is one of the classes where I met the girl who taught me that life lesson. Okay, the first life lesson I have for you this morning is introduce with love. Especially when you are at a summit and you're meeting people from all over the world and different parts of the country. What most people do, when you ask them, hey, tell me about yourself, they will introduce with details. Introducing with details is the simplest thing or the easiest thing you can ever do. You say your name, a couple of accolades here and there, you basically read out your CV and that's about it. Introducing with love means to enjoy the process of making someone aware about something new or something old in a new manner. When someone says, so who are you? Instead of saying, so I am the, and then whatever is on your LinkedIn profile, you throw that up. Instead of that, try to talk who you are as a person. Your job profiles, your positions on those job profiles are transient. They will change. If I would have met you, say 10 years ago, you would have been, hey, I'm a college student. If I would have met you 2-3 years later, you'd been, hey, I'm a master's student. Introducing with love means to be proud of first who you are, but also tell others what you stand for. Let me give you a quick example. I was speaking at a leadership summit 2 years ago, and I was introduced to the vice president of the company that was organizing it. So I met him in the Hotel Ellie just before I was about to be on stage, and he said, nice to meet you, young man. And I said, thank you. He said, I'm looking forward to hearing you out. And I said, oh, I would love to know more about you, because after the conference, you're generally talking. And he said, well, I am the VP of the sales division of whatever. And I said, oh, I've never been a VP of anything. I would really like to know about you. And he said, well, I have been the district head of the Rotary chapter of. I said, oh, that's interesting. Wow, I really never came across worked with Rotary. Tell me about yourself. And he said, well, I mentor 4 startups that now have a turnover of. He spoke to me for 20 minutes in the Hotel Alley. And there was nothing about him that I knew, that I couldn't find or Google him on. When we got into the auditorium and started the session and spoke about this life lesson, I said, I want to do a quick activity. I want everybody in the room to write in one line who they are. And I looked at this guy, and he was struggling because he started with VP. And I said, no positions. So he cut that. He started with Rotary head, and I said, no, nothing, no work profile again. And then he's cutting that down. And at the end of it, 5 minutes, 12 seconds later, he wrote, I feel like I'm a Superman in real life. So I went to him, I said, what makes you say that? And he said, despite my position in office, I am always looking out for the last person in the row. I'm always got the back of my colleagues. I'm always more considerate about the leaves they are getting if they're leaving office on time. And he said, that makes me feel very, very good about myself. And I said, that's your introduction? And he said, yeah, that's my introduction. And then he started writing, I'm also someone who will smile at you even if you don't smile at me. And 5 minutes later, we had like 5 pointers to him. But I could not believe that a person who had crossed mid-50s had never paused to reflect on who he is and not what he does. Most of the time when you introduce yourself, you talk about what you do, not who you are. And I think if you remind enough people in the world that you work with, get to acquaint yourself with, or yourself for that matter, who you are, I think it does add to the energy of you being more of that. And even if somebody meets you 25 years later and you said to that person, hey, I loved travel 25 years ago, they will still ask you the question, are you still traveling? Like I always introduce myself saying, I am the biggest cheerleader, supporter, enthusiast of aloo parathas. So people I taught at 17 or the conferences I spoke at 18, now I get there and the breakfast is aloo parathas. I'm telling you, it helps. Or people who have told me things about, hey, I really enjoy a meaningful conversation. I'll meet them now and think to myself, if I can give and make it a productive conversation because the person said, that's who they are, that's what they like. So your introduction with love is a definition of what is true to your being and not a listing down of your accolades, CV, or your LinkedIn profile. That takes me to the next life lesson. I chose this lesson because I thought once you've learned to introduce yourself with love, does it end there? No. There's an African saying that says, be cautious when a naked person offers you a shirt. You know what that means? That means be careful when people say, I love you, but I hate myself. People cannot offer you what they don't have for themselves. And when you work in family-run businesses, in startups, in entrepreneurial cells, in organizations, in setups that you have created, it's very important to look for romance. And I'm not talking about sentimentality and mush. I'm talking about agape. I'm talking about human connect love. It's very difficult in business setups to look more into a person's role as a human than the skill and the talent they bring on the table. This life lesson comes from a playwright named John Patrick Goggins. He wrote that people say, I love you all the time. When they say, can I get you an additional cup of coffee? Are you working late tonight? I'll stay with you. Can I drop you home? It's going to rain outside. Take an umbrella. Step inside. You're going to break your neck with that door. Or they hold the door for you and say, I'm happy to see you. Or even when they say, I got your printout from the machine. People say, I love you all the time. They might not say in the language you expect, but there are hundreds of ways to word it, my dear. You just have to listen to it. I love that life lesson so much because ever since I started teaching that in corporate houses, there has been a change in the way people respond to each other. They don't go through the day looking at in-your-face compliments, but they look for these subtle and insightful ways that people can touch upon your heart. And then go through living with an organization or working in a setup, wanting to give more because they know they're appreciated and valued. So it's another assignment for you to think of ways people have said, I love you to you in the last 1 week or at the Print Summit. That's a nice one. How do people make you feel appreciated, valued, without making it direct and in your face? The next life lesson I want to share with you is use your skills to help someone express better. This life lesson came from a guy named Sanket Avlani from Mumbai. He said to me that, Deepak, I am a design student, I am an artist. How do I contribute to the world better? What can I do for the normal lives we live to enhance it? So you know what he did with his abilities? He went around, and you might have seen this in Mumbai and now in Varanasi and Delhi and other parts of the country. They designed fabric called taxi fabric with stories, with art, inside your daily commute vehicles, so that the passengers not only have something new to look in the time they're spending, especially in Mumbai when you're stuck in traffic for almost hours, and the taxi driver to have a whole new world. And even auto rickshaw drivers is what they transition to. And this is just one of that. What they also did was sign languages for kids. So while you're on a taxi ride, you actually learn sign language. And by the end of your ride, not only have you reached your destination, you've also reached a new heightened awareness of what it means to communicate with the deaf and the dumb. There are taxis about women's safety. There are taxis about rights. There are taxis about just feeling good and creative, thought-provoking quotes. I look at that and think of what I can do. So in 2016, I adopted a village in Uttarakhand. Uttarakhand, some of you might not know, is facing a huge threat. And the threat is that of ghost villages. Villages and villages are now getting emptied out with their physical structures, just like this one still remaining, but no one living there because of lack of employment, lack of education, lack of medical facilities. Sword is one of those 1,100 ghost villages. Out of 300, only 12 families now remain in Sword. So in 2016, I went, traced every single family who used to live in this village, along with the 12 that still live there, collected their life lessons, and we painted on the walls of Sword the life lessons of its former and current residents. And now Sword is the first village of life lessons in the world. What that does is, it brings back people to their roots. Ever since we finished painting that whole village and wrote the life lessons, so many people from around the world heard about it on TED Talks India, heard about it on BBC, on all news sites across the world, and came back to the village and made a connection. And now are providing education, are now providing support to restore their houses into homestays so that the remaining 12 families can have tourism as a means of sustaining themselves and not leaving the village. That is what you can do and what I tried to do with my skills. I'm trying to think, thank you. You know, when I was in the village, the most fascinating thing was there's a story. The story is of this village not requesting for rain, but demanding it. So every time it doesn't rain for like a considerable amount of time, the whole village gathers together in the courtyard of the mandir and prays to the goddess Surkanda, which is a popular deity in the region, for rain. And they say in the last 600 years, it always rains. So I said, what if it doesn't? And they say we gather together the next day. There's a small stone that covers the statue of the goddess. We remove the stone and then we curse and say, now get burnt in the sun as much as we are. And that's how we make it equal. And I said, what does that teach? And they said, it teaches a beautiful relationship with God. That religion doesn't have to be feared. It has to be befriended and used as a bond to connect. And in insightfully amazing and impactful life lesson from a rural ghost village about secularism, about spirituality, about religion is what I learned. I want to take you to the next life lesson, which comes from all the way from Pakistan, and it is embrace small beginnings. There's a guy named Benji Williams. Benji grew up in America, was selected as an Acumen Fellow, went to Kenya for his first project. And he told me, Deepak, nothing good came out of this multi-million-dollar education project in Kenya, except that one woman got an opportunity to go to Canada and study for her bachelor's. That's about it. Everybody was sad about the project failing. Benji moved to Pakistan. All team members moved to other parts of the country. 3 years later, when that woman returned from Canada, she went to the Kenyan slum and became the role model for every family to send their kids to school and make them like that woman, which was the goal of the multi-million-dollar project to raise education in the Kenyan slums. But when Benji and his team called up the woman and they said, we are so proud of you. And she said, you don't call me. Because when the project failed, you were so focused on the failing that you overlooked one woman who made it despite the odds. And I think she deserves a huge round of applause, obviously. But more importantly, that lesson translates for people like us, me and you, who are constantly seeking deadlines, achieving goals, meeting targets, thinking of turnovers. Take a moment to embrace small beginnings. When you make a good pitch proposal ready, cheer yourself up. When you give a good presentation, high five yourself or your team, whatever is your style. But take a moment to breathe in the simplicity and the beauty of rejoicing over small victories. The world we live in allows us to think of constantly seeking to achieve, and I'm an overachiever. But it wasn't the case when I went to teach kids in Afghanistan. There were girls and boys studying together in Afghanistan Youth House, which is a big no-no for Taliban. As I taught for nearly 6 months, over 800 students, bomb blasts, threats, death threats became very common for the school authorities and via to me. In 2015, December, the school finally closed because there was a bomb blast 200 meters away from the school, and that was the final seal. And I was very upset because I really wanted to go back and meet my students, and they were getting displaced because the school would be shut down. So some of them would end up being waiters and refugees in Iran. The girls would get married at the age of 15. I was crying over Skype. And one of my students reminded me of Benji's life lesson and said, Deepak, you taught us embrace small beginnings. Of course, you could have done so much with our lives here, but it's okay. At least we now know that our life lessons will be taught in auditoriums and in classrooms around the world. And even if we are not getting the 6-figure pay package, we have made our impact. Embrace your beginning. I feel that saved the whole overwhelming emotion of my context of the Afghan Taliban and the school being shut down. In life, more so when people judge you and try to weigh your worth in their beam balance, I think taking a moment to feel completely happy and content or celebratory for yourself allows you to rise above the price tags and also the opinions of people about you. That brings me to the next life lesson, which is challenge your limits. There's a guy in South Africa, in Johannesburg, South Africa. His name is Benji Williams. His name is Philani Delada. Philani is a beggar, but he does not beg. Wait a minute. He's a beggar, but he does not beg. What does he do? He collects books, reads them, and provides book reviews to passerbys on the street. So when you cross by him on the street, as you generally do, beggars, he will stop you and say, have you read The Alchemist? And you say, no. So he'll tell you the whole story of this boy who's a shepherd, and then he goes on this search, and then he will dramatize it, and then he will end. But whether he finds the treasure or not, you have to buy the book, sir. So that's how he makes his living, by selling the books. So famous has his approach become that now there is a website by the name Pavement Bookworms and a foundation by the same name where people from all around the world donate second-hand books to Philani. And he has, I'm sure this is, I am so sure this is what it means to challenge your limits, to rise above the conservative and question the conventional. When nobody is looking, how can you up your game? Or even when everybody is looking, how do you continue to up your game? Is what challenging your limits is all about. Philani single-handedly has revolutionized the begging industry and has inspired so many beggars around the world who get to hear of his story to find their own voice and challenge it. The life lesson, however, did not come from Philani. It came from a young woman named Shrishti Bakshi. When she was studying at the Indian School of Business in Hyderabad at age 25, she told me, Deepak, my life lesson is challenge your limits. 5 years later, she is living the truth out of it. She was completely well settled in Hong Kong, working with a big brand. And then she heard all these stories about India not being safe. You know, all her friends abroad said to her, we want to go for a holiday to India this summer. Is it a safe country? The question became so disturbing for her that she started asking herself, what am I doing for my country and the women and the girls and the boys and the men here? So, last September, she challenged her limits by deciding to walk from Kanyakumari to Kashmir, 260 days on foot, 3,600 miles, and teaching digital and financial literacy to young girls and women all across the country, from rural heartlands to city landscapes. As we speak, I think she just crossed Bhopal. And walking 30 kilometers every day is not an easy job. I tried it one day. I had to be wheeled back to the car. And I had a split personality disorder because I could not feel my legs. But Shrishti does it every single day. Not only the walk, but actually stopping during the walk to speak to women and their challenges, teaching them digital literacy with the Google Internet Sathi program and showing them how to use a laptop or how to use a smartphone. She is now doing what they say one person is enough to make difference to one other life and then one other life and the whole country. When she reaches Kashmir in May of this year, she would have expectedly touched nearly 2 lakh lives with just her conversation and classroom workshops. That's one person deciding to live the juice out of their life and challenging their limits. Can we hear it for Shrishti, everybody? And now I get to the last lesson of this talk. The photo you see is from a place in Banaras where people check in to die. There's a hostel in Banaras where people check in to die. It's called Mukti Bhavan. There were 8 such hostels back in the day. Now only 3 remain. Mukti Bhavan is fascinating because you're only given 2 weeks to stay. So you have to be really sure. When I heard about that for the first time, I was like, that is so sad. Imagine if you stay for 2 weeks and then you check out, and on your way out, you know, you're like, damn, missed some timing there. But most importantly, I was fascinated with what would be the life lessons of people who were convinced that they are going to die in 2 weeks. And were not only embracing death, but anticipating it with the timer on. So I went and lived there for a week to interview all these people. And of course, I got amazing life lessons from the people who were on their deathbeds, families who were caring for them. It was a very life-changing experience. But then I interviewed and met Mr. Bhairav Nath Shukla, who's the manager of Mukti Bhavan. He has been a manager of this place for 44 years and has seen 12,000 deaths. What a career. You know, and what a job profile. I was convincing my parents of an alternative career until I met Mr. Bhairav Nath Shukla. 12,000 deaths, name by name on registers that he showed me in that 1 week that I was with him. But I asked him, Mr. Shukla, I'm asking life lessons from all these people who are here, and there are only 10 rooms, so you only have 10 patients at the time. I said, what have you learned? So in the course of that 1 week, he shared with me 12 life lessons that he has learned from 12,000 deaths. I'm leaving you all with one. And the life lesson that was his favorite and resonated deep with me and now has been seen, watched, and read by millions in almost 23 languages around the world is resolve all conflicts today. Mr. Shukla said that all the 12,000 people without a miss had some conflicts to resolve. So when they checked in, they carried so much baggage with them that they were not looking for mukti in the Mukti Bhavan. They were looking for mukti or salvation in their own lives and relationships. He told me a story. He said one of the first Sanskrit scholars of Banaras Hindu University, Mr. Ram Sagar Mishra, checked in one day at Mukti Bhavan with a small pan case. He walked in and said, reserve room number 3 for me. I am going to die on the 16th day after my arrival. So room number 3 was blocked for him. On day 14th, he called Mr. Shukla and said, call my estranged brother of 40 years. He was the eldest of the 6 brothers, and a bitter feud years ago had led to a partition in the house and a wall between the houses of the 2 brothers. So on the 14th day, a telegram was sent to the younger brother. He arrived on the 16th day. And as soon as he arrived, Mishra, who was on his deathbed, held the hand of the brother and said, I ask for your forgiveness. I want you to take down the wall, to care for my family, and to forgive me. This bitterness heavies my heart. I want to resolve every conflict today. And the brother said, of course, I am sorry, my ego was in the way, and all of that happened. And mid-sentence, Mishra stopped speaking, his face became calm, and he was gone in a moment. And I know a lot of people that I tell this story to say, this sounds like a folk fiction novel story. But Mr. Shukla said that he has seen this story repeat millions of times, not just in Mukti Bhavan, but around the world with people. We carry so much unnecessary baggage in our lives, only waiting to drop it till the very end. The trick, he said, lies in not having any conflict. It's life. You are going to. Discourses. But the trick lies in resolving every conflict as soon as you have it at the end of the day. You should never go to bed disappointed, hurt, in doubt, or angry. Pick up the phone, write it down, call up somebody, share it, so that you wake up as bright as the sun, he said. Sorry. I love that lesson because it reminds us that we all still have potential to grow, potential to love, potential to forgive. So I want to leave you all with just the last thought that in the Print Summit, when you all get to interact with each other, definitely ask them about who they are. Look at their answer, hear their answer carefully. Don't judge them. Then ask them about the work they do, because I'm sure it's good to network. And then as you part ways, try to ask, what is their life lesson? Maybe their life lesson will enthrall you, entertain you, enlighten you, or will make you just pause and smile. I want to leave you with the last poem I wrote for TED Talks India. And it's the condensation of everything I stand for. The poem is, उम्र के सारे खेल खेल कर, बुरे भले सब दर्द झेल कर, डूब डूब कर उभर उभर कर, जीत जीत कर, हार हार कर, फुर्सत की 2 घड़ियों में जब इस दिल ने सांस ली, जीवन की सच्चाई सारी जान ली, मान लिया कि खुशियां बन के कभी लम्हों को गुदगुदाती है, कभी गमों की बाह पकड़ लचकाती है, जिंदगी कितना कुछ सिखाती है। सूनी सहमी रातों में चाहा के दिन आबाद रहे, कोई अपना कोई पराया 2 कदम तो साथ चले, कभी भीड़ में गुम हो जाता, कभी तन्हाई का जश्न मनाता, मन ही ये मन को समझाता, कभी पल भर में मंजिलों तक पहुंचाती है, कभी एक ही मोड़ एक ही कारवां 100 बार दोहराती है। ये जिंदगी है, और अगर सीखना चाहो तो जिंदगी बहुत कुछ सिखाती है। जो सीखना चाहो तो जिंदगी बहुत कुछ सिखाती है। थैंक यू।